It's Rick Wilson again, and this is the part 2 of Selma Memories. I've been overwhelmed with how many people that I've gotten in touch with on Facebook, or that I've asked several different people about certain things, and so how you know, the older we get, the more we forget. And I've asked several of you about certain things. It's amazing how many people thought it was fire acres. It's not, it's 5 acres, but I had no idea. The lady that whose father owned it, she got back with me, and she told me that it was fed by deep wells. That's why it was so cold. Man, I'll tell you what. In fact, she's the one that provided the picture in that last one. So if you haven't seen the last part 1 of this, you're gonna have to go do that. Apparently I've decided to do this outside because I definitely didn't like the backdrop of the green, but it's a windy day, so I don't know how this is going to be going, and if you're hearing me or anything else. And I know I need a haircut. You remember the old IGA? I know you do. That's where we used to always get our Landis always had the very best steaks, didn't he? You remember that? They don't even use it for that anymore. I think it's a church or something now. I don't know what it is, but that's where I get my haircuts, over at Bobby's, Bobby Gantz, and he has COVID right now, so you need to pray for him. But yes, he's still cutting hair, and I don't know how old he is. He's got to be pretty old, but anyway, that's also some big time memories over there. But anyway, I wanted to talk today about the Mill Village. Now, I guess I didn't really realize that there was more than one Mill Village in Selma, but there is. One was over there kind of close to where the railroad, Southern Railway and all that was and is. Back where the bush hog area is and that kind of thing. But I'm not talking about that. You can hear guns going off in the background because there's 3 hunting clubs that join my land. But anyway, the one I'm talking about is the Mill Village over there by the where the old cigar factory used to be, which is not there anymore, unfortunately. They tore it down. And even before that, it was a cotton gin, or a cotton where they gin cotton and that kind of thing. My grandfather, Pawpaw, Doc Seal, Irene Seal was his wife's name. My granny. I'm going to talk a little bit about them. That's where they worked. That's where my Pawpaw retired from. And it was pretty rough back then. They got a job there, and they built these little shot houses, and you know what those are. They're just little bitty long buildings. They may have 1 or 2 rooms in them. They had like 1 light bulb coming down in the middle of them. Well, Granny and Pawpaw met at a very early age, and they got married. They got married down in Dallas County courthouse, and my granny, she was 15 and Pawpaw was 16, and Granny wrote on a piece of paper, she told me, with a 16 on the piece of paper, and put it in her shoe. When the judge asked her, was she over 16, she said, yeah. Well, don't judge them. They stayed married for over 60 years, so it was definitely one of those love things. But you know what? This was like during the Depression and that kind of thing. And she told me that they actually had crate for furniture. They made their mattresses out of corn stalks and you know, corn leaves, whatever you call those things. She said she woke up in the middle of the night and Doc was hitting on her, moving her around. She said, "Doc, stop that." He going, "Like what?" Well, they got out of the bed and there was a snake in the mattress. But oh man, anyway, that was what I call hard times. You know, we really don't know how good we have it now. She also told me about this story about, well, you got to understand, my grandfather and grandmother, Papa and Granny, they were one of the first ones to actually get to move out of the mill village, and because both of them had a job. A lot of times, both parents didn't have jobs, but they did. And I remember Papa telling me about the house that he built. It's still there. It's on Corley, and it was just a whole lot of different time. He had them cut the wood for that house with no knots in it. Now, there wasn't plywood, there wasn't any of that kind of stuff back in the 20s or 10s, teens, I guess. I don't, it was a long time ago. But there's not a single knot in any of the wood in that house. Now, I don't know about the you know, in between the walls and stuff like the 2x4s, that kind of thing. But we've checked that out. There's no knots in that house. Can you imagine trying to get that now? Wow. But Granny was telling me about this couple that lived in their area over there. Like I said, it was during the Depression, and the little couple's baby died. And even my mother remembers this. They brought it over to my Granny's house, and my Granny put it on the table, the little baby, and wrapped it up in newspaper. And Doc, her husband, Papa, walked all over that neighborhood trying to find 2 tires to go on their Model T so that they could take that baby and drive it with the family, of course, out to the country where they actually came from so that they could bury that baby. But different times back then. My Granny had, I don't know how many children. It was quite a few. They all died except for my mother and my uncle. And my uncle was on they had built out of a Model T, they had built this little dune buggy. And he and his friends, they were on a riding around town, so hit a bad bump, and he hit his head on the rail, and he had bad headaches after that. And finally, before it was too late, he died from that. And but that was also a sad time. So I only have known my mother as far with no brothers and sisters. I never met them. That he was like 16 when that happened. So that was a long time ago, and just different times. But let me tell you a little bit about what I used to do in the mill village. Me and some friends of ours, the ones that when I'd visit my Granny, we would pick plums off of her trees, and we'd put them in glass jars. And Granny had a wooden wagon with wooden wheels and everything. It was really, really old, and we fill that thing up with those glass jars of plums and pull them all over the mill village trying to sell them. We never sold a single one. We never sold a single one, but we was really tired. Where we would end up at Hatfield's store. You remember where that was? Jerry Hatfield's dad is what I found out. So we would go there to buy a push-up. You remember those things? They were orange. They were so good when it was hot. And then we'd go, stand on the bridge for a little while and throw rocks and stuff into the bridge. But that was some of my memories there. Me and my papa used to sit on his porch, and we've got pictures of that house that he built, and it was, like I said, one of the first ones that was built in that area. We've got it, and it's built, and it's almost like out in the middle of this pasture, because there was no other houses built around at that time. It was only the mill village. And but that was before my time. But when I was 8 or 9 years old, even earlier, we used to sit on the porch with Papa, and he smoked cigars all the time and chewed Bull of the Woods. And he'd slip us that cigar, and we'd take a hit off of it. And like I said, we was like 7 and 8 years old, and we'd cough a while. He thought that was so funny, but I remember me and a friend of mine. I think it was either Gary Miller or it was Clint Ernest. Blake Ernest was in the Rogues, what I talked about on the last thing. I knew Blake Ernest, and that's why I mentioned the Rogue. But anyway, we stole a bunch of cigars from Pawpaw, and we smoked them. And we were sick as a dog, and I guess we were probably around 10 at this time. And Pawpaw knew something was up, and he knew that we were sick, and I'm sure he could smell it on us. But he told us, he said, you know, when I was younger and I used to smoke cigars, I used to find a cold floor to lay on. Well, that just happened to be convenient because all the floors in Pawpaw's house was made of vinyl. You remember those cheap vinyl floors? So we come on. So we went and got in one of the rooms, and me and this other fella, we laid down on that cold floor. It did make us feel better, but both of us looked up and we saw that door open up real slow, and it was my Pawpaw, and then it closed it back. He knew dang well what we had done. But anyway, that was one of my fond memories of Pawpaw. Pawpaw had right next to their house, they had a field that was an acre, and he always had a really nice garden in it. He had one of these two-wheel what is it? Anyway, had two big tractor wheels, and it had the motor in the middle, but it had the plow behind it. And that's what he had a rope that he'd pull it with and start, and he'd do that whole dead blame thing. Well, it rained really hard, and it was about halfway through the season. He had a beautiful garden, and I got out there in it. And I walked about halfway, and all of a sudden I was in mud all the way up to my kneecaps, and I thought that was so fun. So I was walking around all over that beautiful garden, and I just ruined it. And you know, when you're as young as I was then, I was probably, you know, 7 or 8 years old then, and their house was up off the ground. And after I looked back and I saw everything I did, I hid under the house. I hid under there for a long time, and but I remember he was very upset about it, but it's such a long time ago. That's all I remember. I don't remember if he whipped me or anything else, but if he didn't, he probably should have. I remember, speaking of whippings, I remember sitting, Pawpaw was sitting out on the front. He always put his feet up on the banisters. He had a BB gun that he would shoot birds and skinks, and he hated lizards. And so he could shoot a lizard in a heart. But anyway, he's sitting there, and Granny had a bunch of wax apples and fruit on the table. And back then they were made of wax. They weren't made of plastic. So it was late in the afternoon, I guess around 6 o'clock, a little dark. Not bad, but a little dark. So he always had a pocket knife. I carried it out on the front porch, and I said, "Hey, Pawpaw, could you could you peel this apple for me?" And sure, son, let me see it. So he got that pocket knife out, and he started cutting on it. He said, "What in the world? This is the hardest." And he cut a big old plug out of that thing. And about that time, Granny come around that corner, and she was fit to be tied, buddy. She was mad as the devil at Doc. "How come you couldn't tell that wasn't real, man?" I got tore up. He got in all kind of trouble. But the maddest I ever saw Granny is me and my brother. We was playing music in the front room there, and she had this ornate table, and it had a special cut glass on the top. And he had a antenna that came off of an old truck or something, you know, the kind that pulls out. And he was acting like that was a drumstick. And Granny had already warned us about it. Don't you break. And about that, pow! My brother hit that glass and it broke it all to pieces. And she actually cried about that, but she also actually, Granny never whooped us a whole lot, but she whooped the devil out of us that day. But we needed it anyway. I asked y'all a question about the produce and the bait shop that was across from the Cougar. Now the Cougar service station was right next to Elsie's store, which is now, I think, is it Vassar's Air Conditioning? I forgot what he's got his little place in there, but that was Elsie's store, and that's where in her lady years my granny worked stocking and helping her do things in the store. But across from that was the produce store and a bait shop, and we used to go over there and get vegetables and stuff like that, and watch I remember watching the minnows and stuff. That was Deason's produce, and I can't remember who all told me about what the name of it was, but I don't guess I ever really did know that, but it was Deason's. One thing that where Granny and Papa, they live next door to Aunt Daisy and wasn't Doolin. Doolin was the son. What was Uncle Carney? Uncle Carney and Aunt Daisy. They weren't really, I don't think they were really kin to us, but that's what we called them. And they were very close friends. And when they built their house, they got together somehow and decided that they were going to build, and they did build, a large garage barn right on the property line in between the two houses. So Uncle Carney could put his car on one side and Pawpaw could put his car on the other. That's how things were back then. I mean, they weren't any worried about anybody suing anybody or there being a question. And apparently they wasn't worried about anybody else that was going to sell their house later, because now there's a dual garage. Somebody down in the comments are going to need to tell me what I can do about that, because it is still that way. Holy moly. I don't know of anybody that would do that now, but they certainly did. Let me see if there's anything else on here that I wanted to touch on this particular one. Yeah, Papa and I used to sit, when he would babysit me, there was a field across his house. Now that's where Gary Mayton's Auto is now. And there used to be houses over there, but there was a big field across from his house. And we used to sit there and we watched this black man. He was a skinny little fella, and he'd come up with a team of mules. In the middle of the summer, he had on a pair of overalls, and we'd sit there and watch this man. It was unbelievable. Now, we're talking about in the early 60s here. He'd work that team of mules, him being a little skinny man, like it was nothing. And he would plow that whole, I'm sure it was 10 acres. He would plow that whole thing, and we were just amazed at it. Pawpaw would go get cold water and take it out there to him, and he certainly appreciated it. But that was just something that was absolutely amazing to me, to watch that. And I'm glad Pawpaw was able to go take him water too, because that man, I'm telling you, he really did appreciate that water. But anyway, I think this is about where I want to stop now. I'm going to get more into personal history of Selma on the next one, because there is a lot. I want to get into Zany and Bubba Boone and all these different people that I used to know. So hang on to I hope you enjoyed this one. The next one will be part 3, and there may even be a part 4. This has been fun. I hope you give me a like, and hope you will subscribe to my channel. Love you guys. Always remember, I know where you live, so be sweet.